Great. Well, I'll continue to let people in as they show up. But thanks everybody for joining us today. It's great to have you part of this series we've been running. Today we've got Alfred White from College Football Playoff joining us. Really excited to have him be part of that. Some housekeeping elements: if you haven't used Zoom before or not familiar with it, you can actually change the view of your screen. In the top right corner, there's a gallery view or a speaker view, depending whether you want to see just the person who's speaking or whether you want to see everybody who's on the call. On the bottom left, you can control your camera and your mute button, so you can turn yourself on and off of mute. We do encourage this to be an interactive conversation, so feel free to join in and ask questions of Alfred or myself as we're carrying on through the day. So that's on the bottom left of your screen. And then as well, bottom center, you'll see a button that's chat. Feel free to ask questions through here, and we'll be monitoring the chat and bringing those into the conversation. And thank you everybody for sending questions in advance. It's really helped Alfred and I shape some of the conversation for today. Just before we get started with Alfred, wanted to promote next week. We've got Brian Lim from MS Society and John Collins from Parkinson's Canada talking about their peer-to-peer fundraising events, how they've pivoted and gone from their traditional events in person and moved those to virtual events, how they're handling participants, and in particular the commitments to sponsors and bringing new elements to their sponsors going virtual. So without much further ado, I'd like to introduce Alfred White from College Football Playoff. And I guess, Alfred, why don't you tell us about the playoff and where it fits in?
Good afternoon, Brad, and thank you very much for having me today. I've been anxiously looking forward to being with you and your audience today. The College Football Playoff is purely an event. You know, we don't have any governance responsibility over anything in college athletics here in the United States. We are in place to crown the national champion for college football. The playoff matches the #1 ranked team versus the #4 ranked team, and the #2 ranked team versus #3 ranked team in semifinal games that rotate annually among 6 bowl games. The Goodyear Cotton Bowl, the PlayStation Fiesta Bowl, the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl, the Capital One Orange Bowl, the Rose Bowl game, and the All-State Sugar Bowl. This season's playoff semifinals will take place January 1st, 2021 at the Rose Bowl game in Pasadena, California, and at the All-State Sugar Bowl in New Orleans, Louisiana. Our College Football Playoff National Championship will be played Monday, January the 11th, 2021 at Hard Rock Stadium in Miami Gardens, Florida.
That's definitely a busy calendar. So
absolutely.
And as you're naming each of those bowls, they've all got naming rights attached to them, presenting sponsors. And I guess, how do you fight all that clutter?
So we actually enjoy being at the top of the heap, so to speak. So the College Football Playoff, the National Championship game, and the what we call New Year's 6 bowl games that are our semifinal games on a rotational basis. These games are at the very top, and the 7 events, the College Football Playoff and those New Year's 6 bowl games, enjoy rich relationships with ESPN. And ESPN puts incredible resources behind promoting college football, as well as the New Year's 6 bowl games, and especially the College Football Playoff. And so, thankfully, we don't catch ourselves in the clutter all that much. we feel like we're at the what some would call the top of the heap there, and the others that are basically fighting for space and things like that. It's something that we just don't have that much to do with. There's 40-something bowl games here in the United States, and the New Year's Six bowls and the college football playoff. We are essentially immune from the clutter portion of it.
Now, do you work collaborative with the other bowl games, or is it a pretty competitive atmosphere?
So as far as the New Year's Six bowl games are concerned, we are in really close collaboration with them. They are officially a part of our structure, and so we work pretty arm in arm with them, as well as ESPN. And so this is a full-blown collaboration between ESPN, the New Year's Six bowl games, and the college football playoff.
I know, as we were getting onto the call, just talking about, you've got a fairly unique structure because of the relationship with ESPN. You've got your protected list that ESPN brings to the table, as well as an interesting setup for the fact that they're bringing sponsors to the table that, one, blocks categories for you, but then you've got to deliver on. So I wonder if you can just highlight for the group a bit about that.
Well, let me just kind of give an overview of the college football playoff sponsorship program, and I think it'll sort of set the stage for some potential follow-up thoughts that some of the audience might have interest in. The college football playoff partners with Disney Advertising Sales. That's the official parent company for ESPN, and ESPN to manage our official corporate sponsor programs through its television rights agreement with the CFP. ESPN manages the primary national official corporate sponsor program. This management, subject to the CFP approval, includes the sale of media and IP rights connected to the college football playoff. They annually identify and define 15 categories to sell college football playoff sponsorships around. They manage provision of opportunities where sponsors may activate, and they also fulfill assets it is contracted with these sponsors. Now, the CFP also sells official sponsorships that include IP rights. This can sometimes be challenging as ESPN protects and defines 15 of the most revenue-generating categories in U.S. sports marketing. The categories ESPN regularly protects usually represent in the 90th percentile of U.S. sports marketing spending. CFP, on the other hand, enjoys its primary sponsorship sales success in the sale of activations and product placements in connection with national championship game companion events. Our companion events consist of our Playoff Fan Central, which is a 3-day family-oriented football festival. We've also got the AT&T Playoff Playlist Live, which is a 3-day music concert series. And then we have Championship Tailgate, which is a big tailgate party that we have in the parking lot of the stadium that hosts the college football playoff national championship game. So the biggest difference in what ESPN offers a sponsored prospect versus a CFP offering is really media on multiple platforms associated with various Disney properties.
And then do the sponsors you bring to the table, do they get commercial time as well? Is that an extra incentive?
Well, they can get commercial time on the air if they buy media from ESPN. Now, Eckridge, which is a official sponsor of the college football playoff, was sold by the college football playoff, but we facilitated them having a conversation with ESPN to buy time on their platforms to promote their execution of their sponsorship with the CFP.
Okay, great. And then,
new idea that will be essential to your futures.
There we go. Okay, sorry, so just muting somebody. And then, thinking about the fact that you've got a college-based, following, you're picking up on all these college teams. Does that restrict you on specific categories? I know you're independent of the NCAA, but for alcohol or for gaming or other things, is that blocked off on you?
Yeah, so the college football playoff is one of the 40-something bowl games that the NCAA has certified for NCAA Division I football bowl subdivision football. And when you are certified by the NCAA, there are sponsorship and advertising restrictions. And so there are some categories that even the NCAA prohibit any of the bowl games from being a part of. And, really hard alcohol and gaming are, just to name a couple of that you just mentioned, are two that we really have to stay away from. There's certain pharmaceuticals that we have to stay away from as well. And so we are staying in close contact with the NCAA as far as approved companies that we can deal with.
An interesting definition, the hard alcohol. So beer is allowed?
Beer is allowed. We've got an official beer of the college football playoff, Dos Equis.
You can't have a tailgate be dry. It would just be a different experience.
Exactly. Well, if you want a soft drink, we got Dr. Pepper for you.
It sounds like you might have an interesting, addition to your sponsorship elements this year with, NCAA athletes now being able to gain their own endorsement and sponsorship. Have you started to think that through, or how that's going to work, or has that even been approved yet?
It's still in the NCAA process for approval. It hadn't been finalized yet, and we don't know that it'll be finalized in time enough for the 2021 game in Miami Gardens, but it's certainly something that we're monitoring and keeping a close eye on. It's going to be interesting when it's all said and done, we believe.
Is it controversial from your end, or is it something you're just going to roll with and incorporate?
Yeah, we'll pretty much roll with it. I don't see it being controversial. Those young men that play college football are going to be able to be compensated based on their name, image, and likeness. And if there's some company that we're in a relationship with that wants to pay them to endorse their product or service, we'll be ready to roll with it.
And I guess you got the added element of the category restrictions with ESPN or yourselves. It's going to be fairly complex to have to supervise.
Oh, well, it's all part of the job there. We look forward to it. We've got an event that's just 7 years old. We're getting ready to have our 7th national championship game. We've been wildly successful and popular out of the gates. We just see an opportunity to put our student athletes a little bit more front and center as an opportunity to make our event even more popular.
So in terms of partners and who you want to work with, what makes for a great fit?
Well, we feel like we are a property that's flexible. Again, we have been around for just 6 years. And I think this narrative is still a work in progress. We feel like the uniqueness of college football makes for a sponsorship with the CFP to be a good fit for a lot of companies. Pivoting off of the pageantry, the rivalries, and innocence of our sport makes it a perfect platform. 40,000 people that are in person for the game are followers of the participating teams. We go out of our way to make sure that the participating teams' followers are in the stadium for the game. We feel like some fits are obvious to the naked eye, and others that are a work in progress, really depending on the sponsor.
And then, so you've got 40,000 people that are in the game attending, and I guess plus you've got the 2 semifinal games. How many people you get through the fan engagements for the tailgating and for the fan zones?
We typically, over a 3-day period, will get in excess of 50,000 people come to those events. And not all of those people have tickets to the game. A lot of those people are locals in the community where the game is being hosted that don't have tickets to the game. And this is an opportunity for us to, let people that don't have tickets to the game to have a piece of that experience so that they can maybe take away a memento or some kind of a really cool experience away from the college football playoff being in their market.
No, and I think things could prove to be pretty interesting this year. I mean, chatting with you last week, there's some interesting logistical challenges you're doing just as you're trying to plan for this year and set up with your on-site team down in Miami. It'd be interesting just for you to kind of recap that conversation. Just what's going on in terms of planning and you being able to actually fulfill the different elements.
So for a while we were ahead of schedule in our planning down in South Florida for the 2021 game, and and one of the reasons why we were ahead of schedule is because and normally we visit the community that hosts our national championship game on a monthly basis and visit with our host committees and all of the local individuals that are helping us put on the wonderful event that we have. We haven't been down there since February, and but we've continued to have conversations with the good folks down there. We've had lots of Zoom meetings similar to this one, and we are still pacing really pretty well in our planning. But there are some decisions that are yet to be made based on some physical in-person interactions where we've got to get some tape measures out and measure this or measure that. But by and large, we are still doing really well in our planning. We're planning for a game until we are told we don't have one. So it's an interesting process. A little bit challenging, but nothing that we can't overcome.
Well, I think just from the conversation we were having, you're saying that the fan zone's currently a hospital and that the stadium's currently a testing area. So that definitely creates some challenges that the ground team just doesn't even have time for you.
Right, they do there, and this pandemic that the entire world is experiencing has thrown a lot of folks a curveball, but we are not bigger than any human resource or human relations need in any market that we activate in, and so we will stand down and let our communities take care of their residents until they're all taken care of.
And so, I mean, how do you plan for normal, but there's potential for all these contingencies that your fan zone may be completely changed, your tailgate scenario may be changed, even in stadium could be different. Have you got partners who are looking at contingency elements with you, or are you just assuming that everything's going to roll toward normal?
Well, normally we plan for contingencies because we annually play our game in NFL stadiums, and so we've got to make plans like there's going to be an NFL playoff game in our stadium 24 to 48 hours prior to our kickoff. We're intentionally focused on needs to plan for COVID-19, but the Hard Rock Stadium and South Florida communities that are hosting us are being really great partners in our planning for the game and in our companion events. We know that at some point we are going to need to plan for social distancing, but on June 3rd we're probably not there yet. And as things unfold during the college football regular season, we'll know how we need to react come January.
And then, are you seeing much change? Just thinking about the college games that would start normally August into September. Definitely universities here in Canada have been advising students that they're not coming back to school in September. Have you seen similar activity in the US, and is that going to affect the whole system feeding into the playoff?
Well, we're seeing a lot of reports that schools are setting report dates for student athletes to come back to open campuses, and that's been going on since the first of this week, actually. And so it seems like every day when we check the clips about college football, another school or another conference has announced plans to open up their campuses or open up their conferences for student athletes to return and prepare for the 2020 season. And so that's encouraging to us.
No, definitely, and I guess it's just trying to figure out all the safety protocols seem to be the biggest element when you're looking at the professional sports, whether it's NBA, MLB, NHL up here, and trying to figure out how they're going to operate. So the system still would be run the normal games on college campuses, or is there talk about bringing them into more centralized operation?
All we've heard about is things working as usual, and I think these conversations are going on daily on all of the college campuses. We're not a part of them. As I mentioned earlier, that we really have all of our focus on the national championship game in January, but we've got some really intelligent college presidents, conference commissioners, and athletics directors that are working with the scientists and figuring out what's possible and what's not, and they are planning accordingly.
So what type of activations have you seen that have been really successful, whether it's in your fan zone or in coordination with ESPN and other elements associated to the playoff?
So every sponsor really comes to the our public events with an activation that blends in with their year-round campaign. Perhaps you're familiar with Dr. Pepper's Fansville. They brought a portion of that to New Orleans, and they had overwhelming success with fans interacting with the citizens of Fansville. It was really cool that they're able to do that. Dos Equis had college football university last year, where they had a place where kids could come or fans could come after class on college football and talk about the class that you just had on some type of football topics and things of that nature. AT&T will come and put on display how they are interacting with college football. All-state and their field goal nets. Goodyear makes some really cool artwork out of used tire rubber. So it goes on and on and on. We've got some sponsors that can really bring some activations to our public events that really attract a lot of fans that have a good time at these events. And we really don't dictate to them that they formulate their activations around any certain things. If they've got a product or service that they feel like they need to promote around our event, we're very supportive of them being able to do that.
And then what's the approval process when you're working with ESPN or NCAA, and does the NCAA have any approvals for what you do, or is this strictly CFP gets the final say on those kinds of activities?
Well, the approval process depends on the content of the element. So if it's collateral from a sponsor that only mentions the college football playoff, then we can sign off on it. And really, the only elements of any kind of promotion that the college football playoff will sign off on, or anything that involves the CFP. If a participating institution is involved, or a past participant of the championship is involved, that sponsor needs to go and get their approval from that individual institution. If a participating conference is represented in some collateral that they may have, they've got to go get that approval from them. Very seldom is the NCAA ever referenced in anything that is connected with the CFP. But if it was, that sponsor would need to go get the NCAA's approval on that content that referenced the NCAA.
Okay, so you're able to take a bit of a backseat on it and just say, have you ticked the boxes, and then move forward?
Yes, absolutely.
So how do you deal with the stadiums? You've got Dos Equis on board, you've got Dr. Pepper on board. Are you able to bring their product into the stadium, or do you have to abide by the pouring rights that are there?
Well, as part of our bid process, when the sites are selected, we've got specifications that a host committee has to abide by before we agree to go to a certain stadium. Now, when it comes to inside the stadium, it is from a aesthetics perspective, it's a clean environment. So within the competition bowl, the commercial recognition is very limited. It needs to be the name of the facility, but mostly all other commercial recognition is covered. But on the concourses, we work with ESPN and the host committees and the stadium management to make sure that the sponsors that may be in a given stadium are the CFP and ESPN sponsors are protected, so that there's a competitor of theirs in the stadium. We work to cover up those competitors, not necessarily with the sponsors recognition, but maybe CFP signage or something blank. Maybe it's a plain color or something like that. But as far as pouring rights and things like that, we don't come in and change any of those types of things. Dos Equis, in the example that you just made, we've been reasonably lucky since Dos Equis has been a sponsor. We've been able to work with the official concessionaire in the stadiums to have Dos Equis available. They don't really have any pouring rights in any of the stadiums that we have, but they've been able to work with the concessionaire for some opportunities where their products are made available. Dr. Pepper is another one where a lot of stadiums are either Coca-Cola or Pepsi. Sometimes the Dr. Pepper bottler in a given community has a relationship with a distributor that's either Pepsi or Coca-Cola, and they allow them a presence in that stadium where our game is being played. But otherwise, a sponsor like Dr. Pepper, if they're not poured in the stadium, they are able to have their product served and or sampled at that championship tailgate event that I mentioned earlier, which is available on game day on stadium grounds.
And do you find you get much guerrilla sponsorship activity around your events?
Well, we see a lot of it being tried. We do engage a clean zone. That's a part of the specifications that the host committee accept when they agree to host the College Football Playoff National Championship. There are areas. So if the stadium is close to our public events, that clean zone is pretty compact. But like this year, our public events are going to be in Miami Beach, where South Beach is, and so we'll have a clean zone in that particular area. But then we'll also have a clean zone around what we call our stadium campus, which is where the stadium is. Stadium is in a completely different city from where our public events will be, and so we basically have to establish two clean zones where registered trademarks of the CFP can only be used by official sponsors and licensees, there are no competitive marketing campaigns allowed in these clean zones. We've got folks on the ground. We've got boots on the ground to be able to address individuals and/or companies that show up and want to do some things that are not legal.
Because I know you've got your main tailgate space where you've got a lot of activation in there, but I'm assuming there's quite a number of parking lots around the stadium where people are going to be camped out. Gives a lot of opportunity for people to speak in, I guess.
Well, they can try, but we're going to do our best to make sure that we're protecting the substantial investment that these companies have made in our event.
So think about just different changes for this year. Particularly around the physical elements and if people will actually come back to stadium or come back to the fan zones. Have you started pivoting with some sponsors to amp up social media engagement or other virtual engagement?
So we've been having some conversations with ESPN and some of the sponsors. They're starting to have people come back to work. We've had a couple of meetings already this week with some sponsors that are starting to wrap their minds around their campaigns for the fall and our game. But I think our sponsors are looking for opportunities to grow their business and that have results that exceed whatever metrics they have for measuring success for being in their relationship with college football and the CFP. So I think it's it's starting to I think they've been keeping a pretty close eye on the media and whether or not there's going to be a college football regular season, and I think that's been the green light for them to start thinking about social media influencers, digital activations, things of that nature. And we've got all of these types of conversations starting to happen with sponsors.
And do you engage the athletes as part of that, as influencers, or do you have that kind of access?
We don't as we speak. All of our sponsors have some type of involvement with influencers, we don't contract any influencers. We see that sponsors are using them to promote their association with the CFP. But simple answer to your question is we don't interact with them all that much until they show up at the game and need to be escorted to a suite or VIP area or something like that. But that's really the extent of it.
And I guess only being this is your seventh season, how much alumni engagement do you get from previous athletes?
We're starting to get more and more. So we've had a couple of teams that have played in most of our games, and so those young men they come and have that experience, and so they go off to the NFL, and they always want to figure out a way to get back to wherever our game is, so because they know that a good time is going to be had by all. And so we do have a good number of former players come back and experience our game, and so we feel like this will grow over time. I think the best way for things to get promoted is to show those young men a good time while they're at our game, and then they tell their friends that are still on campus and we feel like the good rumor mill will at the end of the day really help us out a lot.
And so what are the growth opportunities, or where are you hoping to grow the playoff and different audiences you're trying to target?
Well, we certainly are in a collective conversation with our multimedia rights partner, ESPN, when it comes to growing audiences. I think every year we talk about people in their fandom journey. You got some people that are avids, you got some people on the fringe, you got some people that really haven't given us a chance yet. You've got some people that have gone to college, maybe even a big time college that has football, and people that have just never really engaged with college football. All of these people are people that between ESPN and the College Football Playoff and our New Year's Six Bowl partners, these are all folks that we are attracting. We know that there are a variety of demographics that would certainly be helpful for us to have be a part of our audience, and so it's certainly something that we're always on the lookout for to improve.
And I imagine just listening to you talking about people who haven't really engaged with football, and knowing you're from Texas, that just must be kind of out there that people aren't as Friday night crazy.
As an example, we were in a meeting with our ESPN friends not too long ago, and we were talking about regions of the country where football is off the charts and where football is really non-existent. And I guess I would have thought the Northeast was a little bit more on the map than they were, but apparently not. I guess the New England Patriots aren't enough to make people want to engage around football in general and sort of college football in particular. We'll continue to try to get those folks under the tent with us. That's what we always want to do.
And looking at those regional differences, does that impact how you're deciding who your sponsor prospects are? Are you looking at sponsors that are stadium and area specific to where you're hosting the event, or more on the broadcast side that this is going to be really great on ESPN and they'll get some fantastic benefit if they're associated with us?
We don't talk with ESPN a lot about their targets for sponsors. I know that sponsors that we target ourselves, we don't go for companies that are in specific parts of the country. We don't look at any that are advertising on television a good bit. Really, if they're advertising on television a good bit, they'd be a target of ESPN's, and they probably wouldn't be available for us to try to attract to our particular program. But companies that we're looking to be a part of our program are typically wholesome, family-oriented companies that that love college football and want to be on a wonderful ride to promote college football, enjoy college football, be a fan of college football.
And do you have specific categories that you target, that you're at least those talking about the top 15 that ESPN claims, and then you've got your next group?
All right. So on an annual basis, as I mentioned earlier, we allow ESPN to identify and define 15 categories, and so we are actually in that window where we are executing that process for them to identify their categories for this year. And so within the next week, we'll probably be nailing down the categories that they will protect for the 2021 college football season. And we can't wait to determine category 16 and beyond, so that we can go after those. We always are prospecting, sponsors with the hope that ESPN won't protect their categories, and so once we know for sure which categories they will protect, we'll be making our pitches to those categories, like I said, 16 and beyond.
I guess from a timing and sales funnel, it must create a bit of a challenge that you're talking June will be the close off from ESPN, and that really only gives you 6 months till the event, which isn't a lot of sales time.
Absolutely, you're exactly right about that, and we are looking to establish relationships with prospects in categories that might not land within their protected realm. And so if they don't, we can, push a button where they can be involved with us. And we seem like we've got some opportunities for sponsors to, to test out our particular property, whether it's hospitality and experiential marketing, where they can bring executives, customers, and clients. We've got a program called Playoff Premium that allows for people to buy plussed up ticket packages and suites at our game, where a company can come and observe it from a year, and then the next year determine that they want to do something a little bit more involved. So we've got that available for them. We've also got programs where somebody could just come and activate at one of these public events that we put on, not use any IP rights in an initial year. So in the future, if they don't reside in a protected category, they could do something even more interactive around the CFP and our IP rights.
Definitely creates a lot of grooming and keeping people warm on the back burner, just in case they open up.
Right.
Do you do a fair investment in that hospitality and giving people the taste of it for future potential?
Well, we do, but we also get a lot of people that buy into it, and so it's been a wildly successful enterprise for us to have Playoff Premium. We've sold out of the opportunities here.
And then do you have to do a big sales initiative to make that happen, or you just find that you've got people who are warm and it's an easy entree to get them into there?
So I think what I haven't talked about all that much is how on the sponsor side of things, as well as our Playoff Premium side of things, we're really a relationship buy for a lot of folks. And so we've got relationships with what we call sales agencies that have relationships with people that like coming to events like the College Football Playoff. And, these folks are in conversation with people on an ongoing basis about going to iconic events like what we are in the process of becoming. And they ultimately make decisions to come to the College Football Playoff in basically a hospitality kind of experience, and then things really grow from there. And so our methodology is working for now, especially in the stage of our existence, and we hopefully it will grow from here.
And those agencies being media buyers or just sports experience packages that people can buy into?
Sports experience packagers. We call them experience marketers, and there is quite the the market of individuals around the world actually that like to come and experience events like this, especially in a plussed up kind of way. You can certainly buy a ticket to come to the game, but when you get to stay in the best hotels, you get a gift suite experience. You get to go on the game, go on the field after the game is over with, and do snow angels and confetti and things like that. There are a lot of people that like doing things like that.
And that's all managed outside of you, or how does that relationship work?
That's under our umbrella at the Marketing and Strategic Partnerships team here at the College Football Playoff. We basically manage the operation side of things, but then we've got sales agencies that help us sell those experiences.
So you've definitely got a lot of communication touch points. Just how do you manage it all? You've got the ESPN relationships you're going through, you've got your actual sponsorship relationships, and then you've got, your local engagement plus these different grooming opportunities for sponsors. Have you got a management process for it, or what's that look like?
Well, we have no dull moments, that's for sure, and we keep in contact with all of these partners that we have. We've got fabulous partners that we are able to stay in close contact with. They are in contact with potential buyers of our assets, and we feel like we are managing the communication as well as possible. It's really sophisticated public relations. We're talking to people all the time. We're listening to hear what their needs might be and doing our best to fulfill those.
How big a team do you have?
It's myself. I've got an assistant director, and we typically have an intern that works with us for 9 months of the year.
So that's a lot of time on the phone and a lot of management from your end.
No question about it. I think when the pandemic hit, doing all of this from home was a little daunting. I've kind of gotten used to it, but I miss seeing my team on a daily basis.
No, definitely. I think everybody's kind of desperate for that contact with different people, and it's amazing. I know from a number of events that I've run in the past, you learn more in the hallway conversation than you do in any meeting you're at. So it's
oh, absolutely. And you can share information with people that maybe they didn't know previously or hadn't thought of, and that they can use in a future conversation with somebody that might be selling some of our products.
Has that changed your sales process much?
Not really. Really what we're doing is we are making sure that our sales organizations have the tools to tell our story. It's like I said, it's a relationship buy for everybody that buys anything from the College Football Playoff, whether it's a playoff premium package or if it's a sponsorship from us. And people have to have their arms around our story, where we've been, where we are, and where we're trying to go. And I think as long as we can make sure that the people that actually have those relationships with people that are interested in our product, they feel good about having those conversations. And so far, it's worked for us, and we will continue to arm those folks with as much information as necessary to make sure that we can continue to sell out of our assets on an annual basis.
Yeah, and I guess based on that format, do you have much flexibility to tailor opportunities to people, or is it really kind of, here's the pro forma package that you're buying into?
Talk more about what you're thinking.
Well, are they just buying a set of assets that this is what your purchase point's going to be? Here's what you're going to get for it. Sort of booth, hospitality, activation on site, maybe something with the ESPN, and that being it. Or do you find that you've got to tailor for each sponsor, or can you design those packages for people?
All of the above, actually. We've got some opportunities that are fully baked out that someone can buy. But if someone wants an experience that's more unique than what we've built and made available to everybody, we're open to that conversation because it ultimately becomes a memorable experience for all of those folks that are coming to our game and going home and thinking, my goodness, I just had the best time of my life. We want everybody that comes to our game to leave having had that experience. And so absolutely, if what we promote and produce is not as much as they would like, and they would like for us to plus it up even more than we plussed up some somewhat normal ticket experience at our event. We're happy to have that conversation, and it goes that way for sponsors as well. If somebody and really we don't force sponsors into any turnkey activations. You know, we've got some turnkey activations that someone can simply attach their name to if they like, but most of the time sponsors will show up and want to activate initiatives around campaigns that they're doing on an annual basis themselves.
And so what's the planning cycle for a lot of that? I know there's a lot of challenges this year, not knowing what you're going to be able to do. When do you have to have things solidified with a sponsor in terms of what they're going to bring on site and what that setup might be?
Yeah, typically we try to get it all get all the hay in the barn by the middle of November. We want to start getting them to shore up their thought process around the 1st of November, and then really by the time November 15th rolls around, preferably the week before Thanksgiving, we know what they're doing, because we've got production companies that are producing things for these public events that we have going on, that we need to be able to give them an appropriate time to really put together a first-class event so that people can have a first-class experience.
I'm amazed by your production company that they can turn that all around in 4 working weeks.
We are too there. We've got some really good ones that we have the opportunity to work with there, and so we're really happy about that.
Fantastic. Well, Alfred, it's been so great to have you join us. And as I said the first time we met, I need a good excuse to come down and check out the playoff one year. I guess it won't be this year, but
why not?
I don't even know if the border will be open by then, the way things are going.
Well, I guess that's right.
It'll take some time, but it need a good excuse to come to Miami anyways.
Absolutely. Come on down.
Excellent. Well, thank you again. It's always been a pleasure to chat with you, Alfred. And I know from the questions we got, people are really interested in what you've been doing. And it's everybody here's Final Four and call it the college football playoff being relatively new. It's definitely been developing that same hype. So it's been really exciting to hear what's going on. And want to thank everybody for joining us. So there will be a recording of this, which will come out tomorrow. If you have any additional questions for Alfred, I'm putting you on the spot, Alfred, but I'm assuming you're okay if I put your email into the follow-up.
Please do.
And then next week we've got Brian Lim from MS Society and John Collins from Parkinson Canada talking about their peer-to-peer events, how that's being repositioned, how they're engaging their partners, and all of the challenges associated with that. So it should be a really good conversation with the pair of them. And again, thank you everybody, and Alfred, knowing what's going on near your house, I hope everything's safe and calms down relatively soon.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate you having me today, and it was good to talk with you.
All right, have a great day, guys.